Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another podcast. We are here at the Digital Wildcatter Studios, and we are joined by Robert Borne, the CEO of Neo Oiltools here in Houston. And we cannot wait to get into your podcast because you have a really interesting career journey from where you came from, working at a big oil field service company for many years, and then taking a leap of faith and trying out a bunch of stuff to now CEO of Neo Oiltools. So, Robert, thank you so much for being here today. We are really excited to dig deep into your story.
Really a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. I've been following you guys for quite a long time, and thank you so much for the invitation.
No, it's really great. And we're really enjoying the Digital Wildcatter Studio and being able to meet everybody in person. So finally meeting Robert in person has been great. You know, we did his pre-interview and learned so much about you. And I have to say, I think you're one of the first people that came from Minnesota. So seems like a place where you would not know about oil and gas. So I'm really interested to know what it was like growing up in Minnesota and like why the oil and gas industry.
If you've ever been to Minneapolis, St. Paul area, beautiful city during the summer, for about 3 months. The rest of the time, it's like the Arctic Circle. Cold, can be somewhat miserable. And if you know anything about the geologic features through that part of the world, it's a giant hunk of granite. There's no oil and gas there, right? So growing up, oil and gas was never a consideration. There was no rigs. There was no activity, no oil field trucks, no oil field anything. Didn't even consider it, right? The gas station was as close as I ever got to oil and gas. Growing up, there's also a lot of big companies in Minnesota, right? So here I am, I'm with the University of Minnesota, I'm studying chemical engineering. I'm pretty convinced I'm gonna go right across town to companies like 3M or General Mills or Cargill. I mean, monster corporations, very high value corporations. This is where a lot of my classmates went. This is where I thought I would go. I was very interested. I was going to stay home. I was never going to leave the state. And then during the fall of my senior year at university, recruiting season on campus, which is kind of part of my connection later in my career, this company showed up with the career fair, kind of the PowerPoint display. There's some pizzas, the information session. And I went, you know, sounded kind of interesting. It's like, okay, they're looking for engineers. I hear the work's outside. I hear you get to travel the world. You get to make lots of money. You get to play with these big toys.
I'm sure we could all see the company in our heads.
I thought I was going to be Indiana Jones and travel the world and just live these amazing experiences. But I couldn't even say the company name, right? My father, when I told him about this, he's like, well, that sounds crazy, but who is this Schlumberger? Are they a French perfume company? Right? I had no idea. I had never seen blue coveralls in my life. I had never heard of them. I had no idea of their level of success because, again, I lived in this big hunk of granite. I still fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. I became a field engineer. They originally wanted me to become a field engineer in the cementing segment, you know, chemical engineering, pumping, cementing. And I'm like, based on the very early things that I've learned about Schlumberger, it looks like wireline's the spot, right? Because back in those days, wireline was like the spot. So I insisted. I said, I need to be a wireline field engineer. And they said, okay, fine, we'll try you out. 23 years later and a few stops, man, I'm oil field to my core now. And I haven't lived in Minnesota in a very long time. I go back and visit. I have no way to leap home and live this oil field life, so I visit often. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and Indiana Jones, to say the least. I think that's been somewhat fulfilled.
I love that. And it's really incredible just how random things happen in your life where you just happen to meet somebody or you happen to see a company in a career fair, and then here we are 23 years later, and that happened just because of that moment and you deciding to look into it.
I still have friends from university. They're like, we have no idea how you ended up there. One of those friends, a guy named Mike, I haven't spoken to him in a few years, but the last time we spoke, he's like, look, Rob, we were in the same classes. We studied in the same study groups. We took the same tests. We graduated at the same time. He goes, I went to General Mills down the road, and for the first 2 years of my career, this is Mike talking,
Mhm.
I worked on a drying oven designing the new Cheerio, like cereal.
Oh yeah.
In the first 2 years of my career, I did a couple laps around the world and I got to see some pretty amazing things, right? I'd like to think, humbly, I won.
Yeah, you
It's
made the
been
right
okay.
choice.
It's been okay. But yeah, it
That's
was a
awesome.
cool early experience, I would say.
And so tell us now, as CEO, looking back at your career, what were maybe some experiences or pivotal moments that really shaped you into becoming that CEO that maybe you've always wanted to be? Through the challenges and the ups and downs, I think you learn from different people and what not to be.
True, on all sides, on all accounts. I've had a lot of different roles, right? Yes, I started with Schlumberger. I spent almost 14 years with Schlumberger, and a lot of great experiences, some not so great experiences, a lot of great results, a lot of challenges, right? But over that 14 years, I had 7 or 8 different roles that not only span field engineering and frontline sales, city sales, operations management. I had probably one of the best roles of my career was in HR. I was a recruiting manager with Schlumberger for a number of years. And that was an opportunity that I didn't see coming. Many of those opportunities came in Schlumberger that I didn't see coming, that turned out to be a great learning experience. And each one of those opportunities that I had, each one of those roles, I had no idea what I was walking into, but I learned a ton to fill in some of the blocks that eventually led to enough blocks to understand really how a company's built, how companies run, how to be safe, how to be efficient, how to work with people, how to work with customers, how to work with suppliers. And what you don't realize is over that time, the first 14 in Schlumberger, as well as experiences after that, it's 23 years later, and it's step by step growing and putting together those blocks until you have the building, right? So it's been very fulfilling. But here, kind of earlier, as we discussed, the way I describe it to some people is tons of great experiences, tons of great people, still lifelong friends, deep connections, seen nearly everything there is to see. But there's been a lot of ups. There's also been some downs, right? I mean, during that time, you seem to acquire some of the tattoos along the way, but also some of the scars, right? So, no, it's a dynamic industry. You learn how to have hopefully an optimistic or a pragmatic look at what the industry faces, and when the challenging times come, you find a way through, and you keep pushing ahead. I feel very lucky to have the role I do today, but luck happens when you're prepared and the chance comes, right?
Yeah. And I want to kind of talk about your HR experience, because I think especially for those who have the field experience, you did the wireline in the field, you moved up, and then all of a sudden you get asked like this HR role, which it's like kind of like, wait, why me in HR? Like, what am I going to do? And then with that, you come up with this awesome plan, which is actually how Massiel even got hired into Schlumberger, was the steel toes to stilettos, which when I think about your experiences before this point, like, where did you even come up with that initiative and to drive more women in the field? And what was your first take when they were like, hey, you're going to go to HR?
So I was just showing up to my boss's office for the year-end review, kind of performance appraisal process, and I didn't even think anything of it, right? I showed up and it's like, hey, you had a good year last year. Here's kind of your rating. Here's what we're looking forward to. By the way, you're transferred. And he just kept going with the conversation. I'm like, hold on, what? And it was one of those like, oh, yeah, you're transferred. Here's your transfer letter. You're going to become the recruiting manager for North America down in Sugar Land, Texas at the time. And my jaw nearly hit the floor, because that was a pretty hard left turn from someone that had been in field engineering, had been in sales, had been in kind of early frontline management, field service manager, operations manager. And that was really the path that I wanted to take. So HR was never part of my vision. It was never part of the plan. But there was a new plan, right? I just didn't know about it. what I would say to both of you and to anyone that cares to listen, the role that I had in HR that lasted almost 3 years, without that role and without the learnings that I had in that role, I would not be sitting in the chair that I'm sitting in today. And if anybody ever had an opportunity to really understand not only how to interact and communicate with people, but really the building blocks of HR, human resources, recruiting, compensation management, succession planning, it's a pretty heavy subject. And if you really have a lot of deep learning and experience in that space, it's a key to moving forward successfully. So if you ever have an opportunity, to anyone, I would say don't look at it like, oh, right? Just jump in, right? Great experience. I was also very lucky at that point when I went to that role to have my direct manager, became a friend, became very much a mentor, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Wayne Finger. Right?
Oh, I know.
You probably know Wayne. Wayne's a fantastic human.
Yeah.
You know, hi Wayne, if you're listening.
Yes, he's wonderful.
Great guy, very experienced in the space, and he taught me a ton. And he also allowed me some breathing room to kind of understand that space, right? Coming from kind of my background, I was a fish out of water for a while. Right. But he gave very gracefully, he gave me enough space to kind of put my stamp on it to figure it out and to ultimately be very successful in that space. But he also said, one of the biggest struggles that we have in this space is you're really in charge of an entire recruiting team or recruiting staff. You're looking at North America. These are some of the premier universities around the world, right here in North America. He goes, this was a pretty heavy recruiting time, at least early. We need to hire a lot of field engineers, and a field engineering role in oil and gas services, no matter the company, can be a bit challenging to recruit for because that's a hard job, right? You're at the well site. It's a 24-hour lifestyle. You're at least 100 miles away from anything cool.
Yeah,
right?
It's very manual too.
Yeah, it's manual labor. There's a lot
You're outnumbered. You're the only.
Yeah, it's difficult. And that's one of the keys. He's like, not only do we have to recruit, or you're really in charge of the team that's going to recruit for a difficult role to recruit for, looking for very smart engineers that are fresh out, but we also are very challenged, and this is years ago. I'm dating myself with some of the gray hair here. We're very challenged on the gender diversity of that group because we really have a lot of untapped potential with some very bright, intelligent, fresh out engineers, and really the entire female cohort may not fully know who we are, right? So this program, Stilettos to Steel Toes, when I came in, there was a couple of drafts. There was some early work. There was a guy named Frank and a guy named Chris, way back that were kind of playing around with it. Wayne came in and he fully supported this, and it turned into photo shoots, and it turned into a lot of media, and it turned into a lot of advertising. But really, what it was being able to show an entire untapped population that they could run the whole thing, right? That they were smart, that they were capable, that they were being invited into what looked like a pretty uninviting field at that point. No pun intended on the word field, kind of. And it turned into, hey, Rob, we're going to hand you the keys to the car, right? There's some sketches, there's some early kind of test work, there's some ideas, but do something with this. And by the way, right here in your targets for the year, see how many people we need to hire and see how many of them in terms of a relative basis we're really going to push gender diversity. This was at a point that no one else was really pushing the boundaries that far. I spent a lot of time myself with my team traveling to all these universities, talking to deans, provosts, department heads, Society of Women Engineering groups was really a very deep connection to get to the source of actually sitting and talking to populations of students about what the oil field is and trying to educate at that very grassroots level. And then when it comes to universities, you get people's attention when you have pizza, when you have informational sessions, when you offer opportunities for scholarship or connection or being able to donate or invest in some groups. That turned into a thing that really was an essay contest in the universities to really try to pull out the stories of female engineering graduates and kind of what drew them to engineering, what could be in their future, what their aspirations were, and we would donate to the schools. I think this probably connects with you.
It's so funny because everything you're saying is from a different side where I always share it, and
feels
it's
very
kind
familiar.
Of weird. It's so weird.
So I probably still have some of the notebooks on the early plans or designs of what it was meant to be. Really, from a company point of view, it was incredibly successful in terms of recognition of the company, actual results of the recruiting. When I was in that role, almost 3 years, learning all HR and really getting a lot of great input from a lot of great people in the company, as well as greater industry in these universities. We hired over 1,200 total field engineers during that time. Almost 35% of them at that point were female. Which, if you do the math today, I would hope, I haven't tracked these numbers recently, but I would hope that the numbers are better than that today, right? At that time, we're talking 2012, 2014.
Yeah.
That was like world breaking.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can drive down the attrition of a field engineer in the first year, no matter the company, no matter the color, no matter the role, no matter the product line, if you can keep a field engineer for the first year of their career in their role, you probably have them hooked in this industry for life.
Yeah.
And they're probably going to be a valuable resource. And you wish them to be. You hope they do, because they really got kind of the early building blocks and now they're in it, right? If you can recruit the right people out of university, no matter where they come from, if they're the brightest, the smartest, the most capable, the most willing, the most motivated, and 35% or more of them are female, even better. It's good. It's good for the entire industry. But I've seen early...
to touch on what you're saying, and for the listeners, that's how I joined Schlumberger, and that's how I got into the industry, was purely based on the girl from Stilettos to Steel Toes coverall, wearing her coveralls, etc., in the career fair. And for me, to your point, was I knew nothing about the oil and gas industry. I was never planning to go into it. But what drew me was the fact that a company did a campaign to attract me and say, you belong here. Hey, come to the field, come work with us. And that was the only reason I joined. And so it's really interesting to your point of when you joined, just from free pizza, and then here you are today. I'm literally only sitting here today because of the campaign that you launched. So it's quite interesting.
You've had a very successful career. So I would argue you've done what you've done because of you, but we gave you an idea. Right?
Yeah.
So it
was an introduction.
So the idea worked. So congratulations.
We've said it to many companies where I wish there was more of that, because beyond that 2012, 2013
never
campaign,
never seen it again.
In terms of showcasing to women the potential that they can have just through a small campaign around universities. And then the essay, I wrote an essay and I got $1,000 for the Society of Women at McGill. And so for me, it was also wow, this company is giving us $1,000 just to write an essay. Who are they? And so we tell all the companies that they should be doing something around this instead of complaining about not enough gender diversity.
It was, I felt like it was groundbreaking at the time. And I think things have changed quite a bit for the positive since then. But I agree, right? You got to go to the source.
You have to go to the source. Well, to continue, we wanted to talk a little bit about failure. And it's part of success. It's part of everybody's journey to get to where they are today. Is there any one or two kind of points in your life that you can share with us on, when you close your eyes and you think of where was it a point where I really failed, but I learned so much from it, that you want to share with us? What would that be if you close your eyes?
Yeah.
and think
I don't
about
even have to close my eyes for this one. But, I
just
will for a
shows up.
second, just a second. But, you know, I had a great experience for my first 14 years, ups, downs, sideways, people, as I've said, right? But what I learned during that first 14 years is there was a drive in me to really see if I had what it takes to run a company or run an organization. And in that first 14 years, that organization, long storied history, a very well developed organization, lots of functional support, right? There was safety support, there's IT support, there's HR support, there's financial, and there's a lot of guardrails in that space. You can have an incredibly fulfilling, productive, fantastic, wonderful career in that space. I got to a point where I wanted to see if I had what it took without all the support. I didn't want the easy buttons anymore. And it happened to be that I was recruited away from that blue company to a company about this big, right?
Small company.
Small company,
Yeah.
private equity backed, kind of a chip in a chair, right? Had some kind of oil field product lines. It was really based, the field work was based in the Bakken formation of North Dakota. And back then the Bakken was a pretty hot spot. It's quieted down a bit over the years. But I was recruited by the CEO of that company to come in and pretty much be his number two, right? So I came in and I was looking after some of the product lines, some of their sales, business development function. And I was really asked to come in and help professionalize the business, because the first day I ever started with that company, I had a draft of an S1 document, it's called, dropped in front of me, right? Well, what an S1 document is the intent to go public, right? It's the application process to go into like the New York Stock Exchange. I'm still pretty young at this point. I had just come out of this big organization, and all of a sudden I'm facing a whole world that I didn't know anything about, but man, I'm drinking through a fire hose. This is very exciting. What I didn't know at that point, coming out of such a storied and successful and financially viable company, is there's a lot of other challenges in smaller companies, right? You know, the punchline is I learned a lot about a balance sheet really quick, right? This company was, you know, I was there not forever, less than 2 years, but in 2 years, I went from growing the operational business lines, professionaling the business lines, doing more business, connecting with more customers, going on road shows to work to have the company go public or potentially sell the company to a bigger company, which a lot of smaller private companies, this is their space. Quickly to the window for kind of the market was kind of closing, so it probably wasn't the best time to sell or go public, which turned into there was debt, which turned into all of a sudden I'm learning how to manage a company on the way down. Right.
So from let's take it to the
let's go to New York.
I did the entire career
big aspirations to boom.
Yeah, to all of a sudden I'm about to drive this plane. I'm driving this plane into the mountain. Right? And you know that company. I'll be honest. That company no longer exists. That company did liquidate. Right. At the time, it was absolutely frightening. Right. Oh my, what did I do? I just spent 14 years and I could have had a great career and things are great. Now I've joined this company with kind of one vision of what this is going to be, and it's magic, right? And quickly pivoted to, oh my, right? You know, I have a young family at this time. It's my wife, it's myself. Thank God for such a solid foundation there and solid connection. Because at work, everything was flying around pretty quick. I'm just like, oh my, right? Can I just hit rewind 2 years? There was failure there, right? Not only was it company failure, but the way I was learning on the fly to try to manage a company in that size, it takes a while when you leave a gigantic organization to learn how to be a positive force for good and be effective in a smaller organization. It's two different universes, right? I found over the years, I still lean back on my experience in that small company and that very quick arc up and down.
Probably the best lessons learned,
Yeah.
the most
So
growth.
number one most important thing was that HR role. I say that, and I've always said that. Number two most important thing was living that comet up and watching that comet crash.
Yes.
Because the combination of that, I finally felt like I understood what reality is in the oil field, in the oil field service space. And I felt like my skin had been thickened up enough. I had taken enough hits that I finally understood what it meant to really run a company and not just be asked to play my small part in kind of managing the stock price, right? Is what I would say.
Wow.
You know, going through that, like what kept you like positive? And like now looking on the outside, you're CEO, you're running a company. You did go through that hardship. You took on some roles after that to now becoming CEO of Oiltools. But, you know, looking at that experience, a lot of people might say, wow, that was too risky. You know, how did you stay positive, or like what made you stay in the business? And were you envisioning yourself still running a company at that time, even knowing how quickly things can change?
I never once thought about leaving oil and gas, which sounds crazy. But by that point, it was a part of my being. It's just who I was. I'd have to give a major shout out to my wife, Christy, because even when I saw kind of the end of that arc at MBI, you know, and I was spending a lot of time in North Dakota, my family was in Denver. She just said, "Come on home, we got it. No problem." So thank God for that support. I went back to a big company after MBI because there was a bit of shell shock, right? And I would argue that anybody that's been in a situation like that,
wants more stability.
Yeah, you're like, I want you to be protected.
The pendulum swings from one side to the other, right? You're with a monster, well thought of, gigantic, secure, safe organization. And then you go to the little guy, you're kind of out there on the edge, right? You know, once you're on the edge, and that was quite the experience, you know, I went back to a pretty good sized organization. The answer for me is somewhere in the middle, right? I take those learnings every day to my role as CEO of Neo Oiltools. Great technology, differentiated technology, well thought of in the space, great balance sheet, you know, good financials, generating activity, generating revenue, profitable business on a growth trajectory. When you look at opportunities like Neo, they don't come around often, right? And the opportunity came through the network. It came through a friend saying, you know, I want to introduce you to a couple of guys that might be looking for kind of a new path in their business. And when I looked at it, it just started with conversations like this. It was nothing official. It wasn't like a interview, like very formal interview. It was, tell me about what you do. I'll tell you what I do. I'll tell you everything. You tell me everything. Let's sit down. Let's talk. And it turns out I look at Neo and I lean back to the arc of the comet that was MBI. I look at Schlumberger. I look at Weatherford. I look at Baker. I learned something positive and negative in every single one of those experiences. And I've had a lot of different roles. And I can't imagine being anywhere else at this current moment with the skill set that I've been able to kind of put together over time and the network I've been able to grow. I'm having a lot of fun because I've seen what tough looks like. I can handle tough, and not every day's perfect. You have some tough days, but they're nowhere near what tough has been in the past, right? But all those experiences matter. Now I can walk in feeling fairly confident of, okay, whatever today brings.
It wasn't what I went through before.
I may be able to handle this. Right? So, no, it's a great experience, but you guys have been through it too, right? Every role, every person
you learn
meet,
a little bit
every
from
customer,
everything.
You take a bit of everything. Some of those things that I've learned have been pretty extreme, positive and not so positive. But when you look back, it all helps you get to where you are today.
Mm-hmm.
I think something that you mentioned too, so obviously failure is part of the journey to success, and sometimes it's what you relay the most on in the future in terms of like, I've been through this, I know how to handle this, etc. The second one is network, because you just mentioned you got CEO role from a conversation, somebody recognizing a talent in you and putting you in contact with other people. We talk a lot about network and how important that is. I think people sometimes forget that your network is your net worth, and that's how a lot of people get placed in roles. That's how a lot of people hire people when they're building a team. It's people that they know, that they've worked with in the past. So having a network is super important.
It's probably the most important.
Yeah.
Right? You don't last 20 some odd years, 23 plus years in this space, or I would argue any given industry of your choosing, by not connecting with people.
Yeah, building those relationships when you need them.
Your name, your reputation, your ability to actually conduct business, and to have people support you and speak kindly about you. That's all you've got, right? Don't mess that up, right? Not every day or not every role is going to go perfect, right? If they did, I just don't believe they ever will always go perfect. But the conversations that came from Neo Oiltools and what I think is an incredible journey of Neo Oiltools, and I look forward to talking about it.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. The first conversation I had was with my friend. He goes, "Rob, you look kind of bored. I think I have a new potential opportunity for you. Let me introduce you to a couple of guys." Neo Oiltools is a company of less than 10 humans.
Wow.
Less than 10. It's based in Luxembourg. It's based in the middle of Europe, right? Now, it was really a founder engineer and a founder business guy. They were partners for decades, right? Close friends, founders. The engineer is from Belgium, and the business guy, born in France but has been in Dubai for decades. They had grown companies, and they sold a couple of companies along the way very successfully. And they had worked together like every day for like 25 years. The business gentleman, he was reaching a point that he wanted to retire, right? He was looking at that kind of next stage of his life. He wanted to travel, spend time with his family, plays a lot of golf, good human, and good for him.
Yeah.
I look up to him very much. We're close. The engineer had a great idea for a thing that became the Neo Torque tool, right? So this is a downhole drilling tool. It's in vibration mitigation, right? If the drilling environment, this is coming from a guy that came from a wireline background, right? I used to make fun of drillers all the time, and drillers made a lot of fun of wireliners, right? But now that I'm learning more and more about drilling, it's pretty phenomenal, the technology that needs to go into it to be effective, right? You're drilling with a drill bit on the end of a piece of pipe into the center of the earth, right? That's a pretty violent experience downhole. The more you can mitigate vibration and all these different axes and basically settle down the drill string as you're rotating at very high RPMs and you're trying to put a lot of weight on the bit, the more you can mitigate vibration and have that drill bit touch that rock effectively and push, the less failures you're going to have with all the equipment downhole, the faster you're going to drill these wells, the more efficient it's going to be, the better off everybody is, right? So this was invented by this engineer, and it was just world-changing. And he's in the middle of Europe, right?
Yeah, which is kind of far away.
Yeah.
I guess he must have been on the drilling rig? Was
so
he a driller at some point?
He had spent 20 years previous doing full coring, right? So a lot of drilling cores, huge chunks of rock. He was one of the founders of really some really unique and just industry-changing technologies downhole to get these full cores out of the ground. So he's an oil field guy. Once he sold one of the companies, he was able to go back home. He grew up in Belgium, and he's like, "Hey, I'll be back in Belgium now. It's beautiful there, by the way. You should come visit." But looking at Neo, small company, small headcount, wildly successful business. It's one of these, this doesn't happen.
Unicorn.
It's a unicorn type business of incredibly smart people with the right technology and the right IP or patent protection and the right connections and the right network have generated a pretty nice kind of small business. I was asked to come in and turn that small business into a medium-sized business, right? When I talk to younger people in the industry, it seems like a lot of people are in very much a hurry to get to, how quick can they get to director? How quick can they get to VP? How quick can they run something? And can I do that right now?
Yeah.
Feel like 23 years later in my own experience, all of a sudden it's like, I'm not trying to grow this into a $1 billion company. Maybe that comes in time. But right now, how about I grow it into a $200 million company, right? Small to medium is just as hard as medium to large. So bringing a lot of those tools that I've always kind of put together over time. We were in 3 countries at the end of 2023. At the end of 2024, we're now in 8 countries. At the end of 25, it's 13 countries expected.
Wow.
At the end of 26, it's 16, 18 countries. It's a lot of hotels. It's a lot of airline miles. It's a lot of FaceTimes with my family. It's a lot of meetings. It's incredibly fulfilling, but it's a lot of work too. Right?
I can only imagine, and to close for our listeners, I mean, knowing this experience, like everything that you've even talked about today and going from that like comet ship that you talked about where you were going on a high, on a low, the business was not doing well. You ended up leaving that company. You worked for a few different companies. Now you're CEO. Now you're growing this what will be and probably is today profitable company. What, like looking back, like, hindsight's always 2020, like what would you have told your younger self? And you kind of mentioned it just now, like about, always wanting to rush, like instant gratification is our thing for like millennials and Gen Zs, what is your advice to kind of like give our listeners on slowing down, being patient? Is there, something to that, to waiting it out or, for those experiences?
I'm a kid from Minnesota that didn't even know what an oil rig looked like when I signed on the line. I thought a hammerjack was a rig. Honest to God. Up to the point of my first day in the company. Like I really had no clue. But even early on, I wasn't maybe the most coachable, right? I never wanted to really let my guard down early because I wanted people to see that I knew what was going on. I knew where to be. I knew how to do this. Don't worry. I got it. I actually had a more senior field engineer come to me, who I still value very much. He's one of the brightest people I've ever met in my life. I was about a year into the company, and she kind of grabbed me by the ears and said, stop it, right? How on earth do you think you know all this stuff? Because you have no way to know it unless you are taught it, right? My experience in looking back and then trying to help people along the way, the one thing I would tell them is allow yourself to be coachable.
That's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. It's okay if you don't know. How's a kid from Minnesota going to know anything about oil and gas, rigs, wireline logging? Right? What is that? Am I going to cut down trees, or I'm going to take pictures of oil wells? No, nobody knew. But I didn't want to show people that maybe I didn't know, right? And
you wanted to pretend you had it all put together, perfect,
like
button-up suit as well.
Yeah, I got this, right? Be coachable, and sometimes you got to look in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm going to be coachable today because maybe this is something I don't know enough about. You're going to go through a lot of roles. You're going to go through a lot of ups. You're going to go through a lot of downs. In this industry, it's always a roller coaster, right?
Yep.
And there's going to be great times, there's going to be really special times, and there's going to be tough times. Through all of that, it's okay if you don't know everything. No one's expecting you to know everything, but be coachable. That would be what I would say.
And this is why I love the podcast, because I learn something every time we meet somebody. Rob, like it's been so great listening to you and also hearing your experience in the HR, and then also not everybody's linear. Like you got this really cool role right out of SLB, and you probably thought that was going to be like the role, and then that company obviously went sideways, you know, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna go back to a bigger company, feel kind of secure again, to then find yourself now, you know, building a company. And I just think it's just so phenomenal. And I love the whole Minnesota, like Indiana Jones, so cool. So happy that you could join us on the podcast. I mean, this has been like really awesome.
Well, I appreciate you both. My career path, it was never part of the plan. I'm not sure what the plan was, but this most certainly wasn't it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't trade it for the world. And
you could have been designing Cheerios.
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. You know, maybe someone get some inspiration for it. Maybe they figure out what they want to do next. Maybe they know now exactly what they don't want to do.
Yeah,
it's possible too. But no, thank you both so much, and I look forward to hearing more from you guys as you grow this.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks. And thanks for those listening, tuning in. Thanks for coming to all of our podcasts, our events. You know, we have our March 20th event coming up, and then we have another event in October from Flip in the Barrel. And if you want to find us and find out our events, go to www.flipinthebarrel.com. Find us on LinkedIn, Flip in the Barrel. It's Massiel Diez, Jamie Elrod on LinkedIn. Find us, follow us, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for tuning in.
See ya.